folks, we're going to get started here. I'm Dédé Wilson of
Nice.
FODMAP Everyday. We are thrilled to have you here today with Jessica, who is our IBS subtype queen. She wrote the article for us on our website on IBS subtypes, and it's one of the articles that I refer to quite a bit because we find that many people get told they have IBS in the doctor's office. Subtypes are not mentioned, and if subtypes are mentioned, it's usually diarrhea or constipation. And the whole concept of IBS mixed gets overlooked. And yet, there are so many of us who do experience all of these fantastic symptoms which characterize IBS mixed. So I'm going to let Jessica take over in just a moment, just a few housekeeping notes. We are going to do a Q&A towards the end. If you can, type your question into the chat. That's one way I will be referencing them. If you cannot type it in, I will try to elicit some of you by voice, but if you could hold off to the end, that would be great. Also, don't worry about taking notes. All of this is recorded. Because you're here, you are going to be getting a copy of the recording. You will be getting emails that have any of the links to articles or things that we mention in those emails. So we're just here to pay attention to Jessica and take in as much as we can. And I'll also mention again towards the end, we have an amazing deal going on with our meal plan partner, Real Plans. Launching today, they are offering a 50% off deal. They always have a 10-day money back guarantee. So we'll talk a little bit more about meal planners later on, but wanted to give you a heads up. And with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Cool. That's a good app, if anyone was wondering. Okay. I'm going to share my screen and then can Day and Robin, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, hello everybody. My name is Jessica Roocroft, and I'm here today to unravel the mysterious irritable bowel syndrome with mixed bowel habits. I think IBS-M is probably the most underserved subtype of IBS, and definitely one of the most misunderstood. And I'm really looking forward to sharing. I've literally never shared this much of all the secrets that I do in my practice that have served many, many, many people with IBS-M. So I'm really looking forward to sharing with you today, and do be in touch and say in the comments like how this resonated. Does this make sense? Does a few light bulbs go off? What was helpful? I always love feedback, so don't be shy. I'm on Instagram at Jess_nourishes or Facebook at Jess Nourishes. You can always email me too. So without further ado, I just want to take a moment to shout out my mom. She's my favorite IBS-M patient of all, and my past and current IBS-M patients. Without these people, my method for IBS-M wouldn't be what it is today, and it's going to help so many others because of everyone's input in my practice. And of course, thanks to FODMAP Everyday for hosting this webinar. It's really important. And I see all you IBS-M warriors out there. So I don't know if anyone is aware, but IBS is now formally recognized as a disorder of the gut-brain interaction, a DGBI. It's no longer categorized as a functional gastrointestinal issue. It is a gut-brain interaction issue. Simply put, it means that the root cause of IBS is linked to the functioning, or in this case, the miscommunication of the gut-brain axis. There's four things that are involved in the gut-brain axis: your brain, your vagus nerve, your visceral nerves, and your gut bugs. So what this means is it can come with changes in the speed at which moves through your gut. It can alter what kinds of gut bugs, your gut bacteria, etc., are growing or sometimes overgrowing. It can affect the sensitivity of your gut lining and the signaling between the gut and the brain. And I think a lot of people really don't understand clearly what that means when I say signaling between the gut and the brain, gut-brain miscommunication, gut-brain axis, but I have some very, very good examples that really do help people understand what this actually means in real life. Um, so I'm not going to spend so much time on what the actual formal diagnosis of IBS is and IBS mixed, but if you're interested, I have a YouTube channel at Just Nurses. There's a quick video on IBS, the subtypes of IBS. I even show poop photos of what is a mixed bowel habit looking like here. Not photos, images, but so yeah, head over there if you would like a little more information. But um, IBS is, you have to have at least 1 day a week of abdominal pain in the last 3 months associated with, when you're going to the bathroom, usually makes people feel better, and your poop can change in the way it looks, in the consistency, so how it feels, and also the shape of it. So consistency and form are two of the three criteria, as well as pain is related to defecation. Either makes it feel better or makes it feel worse. Usually makes it feel better. And these symptoms have to be around for the last 6 months. Why? Because the doctor needs to make sure that this isn't some transient thing like a parasite, and it's not here to last long. But if you experience abdominal pain for at least 1 day a week, it's been 6 months, and you've got some changes in your bowels, and pain related to the defecation or makes you feel better. This is the diagnostic criteria for IBS when other labs are they come back clear. For example, celiac disease, inflammatory markers. The video really does cover a lot of it, so I'll let you go there if you're interested in more. About, I think the Red One study, I think one study mentioned that the rate of misdiagnosis of IBS is about 15%. So it's actually not that bad. So most of the time you can trust a diagnosis. What trips people up, I think, is not getting a subtype with their diagnosis, because with a subtype in your diagnosis, you can really fine tune your treatment. And we'll get into what that looks like for IBS-M today. So it can easily lead us to believe that this may be not IBS if we don't have the right plan. Of course, it's going to feel like nothing's working, right? Also, IBS has a bunch of layers, and we'll get into those too, that can make things really confusing. So IBS-M, what is this subtype of IBS-M that I'm talking about? You probably know this, you probably live it, but you meet the criteria for IBS-M if you have been diagnosed with IBS and more than 25% of your abnormal poops, this is important, your abnormal poops, not all poops, but your abnormal poops are loose or watery, and more than 25% of your abnormal poops are hard, dry, or lumpy. That's those type 1 or 2 rabbit poops. But note, biggest thing, if you're multitasking, please come back to me. IBS-M is rooted in constipation, not diarrhea. This is key to remember, and I'll get into why in a bit. Okay, my business is actually now called IB-Less. It used to be called Just Nourishes, but my website's still Just Nourishes. But my method that I do for IBS-M in IB-Less programs is starting with gut-directed hypnotherapy. Why? Because it addresses your gut-brain axis. If you've lived with IBS for years and you haven't done anything for your gut-brain axis, I highly recommend that you check out gut-directed hypnotherapy. I'll get into it in more detail in a bit. I do only natural supplements and, of course, the dietary tweak that I'm referring to. Yes, indeed, it's low FODMAP, but done right, it is a lot more effective while we're sort of treating that gut brain axis through gut-directed hypnotherapy. It should be more of a temporary tool, and we'll get into that as well. So this is your broad overview. And that plus sign, the other potential layers to your IBS-M, we will hopefully raise some eyebrows here, because it's possible that you could have IBS-M and something else. IBS-M and histamine intolerance, IBS-M and so on and so forth. So we'll get into these layers that can make it really confusing, and also really easy to think that maybe you were misdiagnosed, but maybe you actually have more than one thing going on. Very possible. Okay, so gut-directed hypnotherapy. So it is one of the few things that we can do that has the potential for long-lasting symptom reduction. Reminder, IBS is now categorized as a DGBI. Doesn't mean it's all in your head, but it means the solution might just be there. A disordered gut-brain interaction means there's a wiring problem with your brain and nerves and your gut, and nobody called the electrician to fix it. So, translation, it means that two people, one person with normal gut and brain axis, one person with disorder of the gut-brain interaction, two people can eat the exact same meal and feel completely different when it's digested. So the person with normal digestion may not feel a thing, and the other person with IBS may experience, as you well know, bloating, gut pain, unpredictable bowels, and so on. So with gut-directed hypnotherapy, this gut-brain connection piece of your puzzle is actually addressed. So this is an example of a DGBI and IBS. Two bodies, same meal, wildly different experiences. This is a scene that plays out in a person with a normal gut-brain interaction upon digesting a meal compared to someone with IBS. So, person without IBS. So the food's going through the gut, okay? Gut, hey brain, did you feel that? Brain, we're digesting a meal, gut. Now, Scram, I'm contemplating life's greatest mysteries, and when I'm due for Botox next, or when the next Yellowstone is coming out, or basically disregards gut and says, it's okay, it's just digestion. Person with IBS, this is the scene that plays out. Gut. Hey, brain, did you feel that? Brain. Oh my God, gut, I did. That hurts. You're digesting poison. It's poison, isn't it? Oh no, it was garlic. I knew I should have read the ingredients. Danger, gut. We are in danger. Evacuate bowels now. We can't eat that food ever again. This happens every single time. Quick, Google map the nearest coffee shop, bathroom station, and the gas station bathroom, and get there in ludicrous speed. And the gut proceeds to urgently evacuate stool per brain's direct orders. Do you see the difference there? This is what a DGBI actually kind of can, it's sort of the analogy of it. So you see the difference here? And you might resonate with the, when you feel that little pang of something, it is very hard to keep calm because classically you know what can happen after. It's a dash to the bathroom, or it's pain, or your life is impacted. So this is what we call the stress symptom cycle. Okay, so if you're still unsure about gut-directed hypnotherapy, I was a skeptic too at first. Of course, stage hypnotherapy has made hypnotherapy seem quite wacky, but it is actually rooted in science. Just so you know, no medication has been proven to be as effective with fewer side effects compared to gut-directed hypnotherapy. And again, it's one of the few things that can provide long-lasting results, unlike needing to stick with a diet or a medication. When you stop those, the symptoms may come back. So yeah, imagine eating foods like garlic and onion, beans, apples, and cashews again because the gut and the brain are now communicating the digestion of the signals and sensations, of regular digestion as nothing to see here. So if you've tried gut-directed hypnotherapy before and didn't notice an improvement, I get that. I did 100 sessions myself before I noticed any improvement. Um, Here's two things I want to ask you. Did you finish the entire protocol? It can take 4 weeks to see an improvement, and a lot of us probably get our worst flare-ups from week 0 to week 4, and it kind of can easily see us give up, right? Did you fall asleep? So gut-directed hypnotherapy works on your subconscious, and you need to be conscious in order for your subconscious to be suggested those good suggestions that things are getting better and nothing to see here, etc., etc. So those are two questions that definitely you should ask yourself if you've tried it before. And if you haven't tried it before, please do it. Um, just check with your healthcare provider. Okay, so supplements. IBS-M is thought to be rooted in constipation, like I said before, more so than diarrhea. So you might have been suggested, oh, just take Imodium for diarrhea days and take laxatives for constipation days. When we take something like, loperamide or Imodium for diarrhea, and your issue is rooted in constipation, this could make us have that sort of one step forward but two steps back thing because we're exacerbating the constipation. The key with IBS-M is keeping bowels moving regularly and consistently so there's no backup and this sort of rebound effect of constipation that comes with a tsunami of diarrhea. So what I use in my practice is a combination of a water magnet. That's something that you can take that can pull water into the gut, ideally gently overnight, because with IBS, when we sleep, our IBS sleeps. Since it's a DGBI, We don't notice the stress symptom cycle when we are asleep. If you're being woken up overnight, that's a red flag that something else is going on, just FYI. So getting back to the water magnet, in my practice, you can use either polyethylene glycol, which is PEG, basically Restoralax, or something natural that you can do is magnesium citrate. I get all the time, I've tried magnesium, it doesn't work. I would like to know what dose you're taking. What kind of magnesium are you taking? Magnesium citrate is the one that actually pulls water into the gut the best. If you're taking magnesium bisglycinate, that's more fully absorbed, more completely absorbed in the gut, and it won't have this water magnet effect. So also the dose. Some people are taking 150 milligrams. That's not going to pull water into the bowel. Usually the threshold is around 300 to 400. So water magnet overnight, pull water into the bowel. It moisturizes stool and it allows for a reliable morning poop. So some people, however, do the water magnet and they have diarrhea the next day. I'm sure a lot of people experience this. This is why I pair soluble fiber at night as well. Soluble fiber, you probably are well aware, it's a type of fiber that ensures that poop isn't too loose. It's nice and formed. So what we do with the water magnet, pulling water into the bowel overnight, we can sort of help mop up any sort of risk of diarrhea or overly loose stools with the soluble fiber. So there you have it. There's my huge secret of IBS-M that has helped so many people stop being reliant on emboldening for diarrhea days, laxatives for constipation days, and just being kind of stuck in this loop of constipation to diarrhea. If we get things moving and keep them moving, these sort of rebound days of diarrhea after constipation days usually stop. I would love to know in the comments what people have tried there before. And if anyone has ever tried that magical duo. And again, thanks to my mom and all my IBS-M patients for letting me physically mail them in the mail these things to try so I could study the effects and works. I will do a study one day, but I'm a mom and I'm tired and I don't really have so much energy, but I'll do that in writing one day. Okay, supplements continued. Obviously, consult your healthcare provider as to which water magnet to potentially try using to speed up the gut pull water into the bowel overnight. So magnesium citrate can't be taken by people with kidney disease usually. Certain medications interact with magnesium citrate. So consult your doctor or your pharmacist, and also how to safely space soluble fiber supplements from other medications. And if you haven't had a bowel movement in 5 to 7 days, never take a fiber supplement and consult your doctor. We don't want you to be obstructed. That's kind of dangerous, right? Okay, so other supplements, abdominal pain and bloating. Some people find peppermint oil helpful, or tinctures like iberogast. For bloating and increased food freedom, we all love our FODZyme. You just put that powder on FODMAPs like garlic, onion, wheat, beans, and that helps break down FODMAPs. Yeah, if anyone has not tried that, I'm sure Dédé and Robin have a link. And then medications. So unlike IBS-D or IBS-C, there are currently no medications at all specifically recommended for only IBS-M. This is why a system like this can be really awesome for someone with IBS-M, because there's about 5 I think off the top of my head I can list off for IBS-C, and there's 2 that I can list off the top of my head for IBS-D, but nothing for IBS-M because it's just not studied well enough and it's misunderstood. Usually though, with the regular poops that we get going for IBS-M, usually these can be avoided. Some use tricyclic antidepressants at a low dose. Talk to your healthcare provider if that is something that you're interested in. But again, no medication is as effective as gut-directed hypnotherapy. Okay, dietary tweak, low FODMAP. I think, if you're here, you know what FODMAPs are, but let's just go a quick run through. I think one of the biggest things we all have to understand is that no human can digest FODMAPs because we don't make our own enzymes to break them down, except for lactose for some. And so they're fermented in the gut by everyone. But with IBS, we might experience the symptoms and flare-ups from eating FODMAPs due to that miscommunication between the gut-brain explained earlier. So the low FODMAP diet can help reduce IBS symptoms like bloating, gas, abdominal pain, while one addresses their gut-brain connection. So keep in mind that the full elimination phase is only meant to be temporarily followed, yet about 50% of those who start get stuck on the elimination phase. So please work with your dietitian and make sure you don't get stuck. Make sure you have an exit plan, is what I like to call an exit plan. It doesn't mean that we're going to finish low FODMAP, do the challenge phase, and we only have, and we don't have to do any other FODMAPs ever again. Maybe there is something that is still bugging you. Maybe garlic over one clove, it just will never work. Maybe it's just one of these things. That's okay. It's better than being on the full elimination phase without ever challenging what you actually can tolerate. It's very interesting after people do gut-directed hypnotherapy and they'll redo a challenge phase because their results are usually markedly different and fewer FODMAPs are reacted to at larger doses. So it's really incredible. So again, low FODMAP ways to follow the temporary elimination phase: scratch cooking, manually reducing FODMAPs. That's where that Real Plans app could come in handy that Dédé was mentioning earlier. The FODMAP targeted enzyme blend like FODZyme I mentioned earlier. There's also FODMate around as well. And buying low FODMAP ready-made products like Body Foods, great apps, Monash, Spoonful, FODMAP friendly. Lots of resources out there. I'm glad that there's a lot more nowadays out there for people with IBS. More tools. Okay, for IBS-M specifically, more tools for you. So you might hear advice of don't have coffee, do have coffee with IBS. This is another point that I would like to drive home about subtype specific information for your IBS. If you know your subtype and your constipation predominant, coffee is actually a very good tool for you. If you're diarrhea predominant IBS like myself, coffee can really throw a wrench in my day if I have too much, right? Day, speaking of coffee. Um, so constipation days for IBS-M. You can increase coffee. Even decaf coffee has chlorogenic acid and can stimulate the gut. If you find that coffee or caffeine specifically, increases your anxiety, decaf still has that ingredient that can help move bowels. Also, just the habit of getting up, walking around, and having a warm drink in your hand could help a bowel movement. So even if it's tea, it doesn't even have to be coffee. 2 kiwi fruits. Those are the most, I think, well-researched fruits for relaxation that are low FODMAP and that won't produce excess gas or bloating like maybe sorbitol in prunes can do. And of course, stay hydrated and moving your body. The diarrhea days. Um, if you have a diarrhea day in your IBS-M cycle, increasing your soluble fiber would be good. You can choose to lower your magnesium that day or lay off of it completely. Um, and also obviously reduce coffee because that speeds up the gut. The shorter the amount of time your stool is in your gut, the less amount of water is reabsorbed. So the wetter the stool is. So that is a pro tip there. Choose gentler movements and reduce roughage like large salads and smoothies if you're having diarrhea days. You probably already do this, but you may not know exactly why this makes your gut feel good. It's because roughage, large salads, smoothies, coffee, they speed up the gut, and therefore there's less time for stool to remain in the gut and less time for it to actually dry out and reabsorb water. We don't want it too in there for too long because then it gets too dry and you get those rabbit pellets. So yeah. Okay, other potential layers. So now it's time to talk about the layers of IBS-M or when it may not be IBS-M at all. So buckle up. We're going to go through just 4 or 5 examples, and there's plenty more. In my programs, I have a quiz that takes people through about 30 different questions to identify the potential different layers that we're dealing with. And some people can have more than one layer. Sometimes layers are related to one another. And I'll get into that in a bit. So here are the most common additional layers that someone that they can have in addition to IBS-M or what can look like IBS-M but is not IBS-M. So for the purposes of this presentation, a layer means you may have IBS-M and something else also. I'll point out when something may not be IBS-M at all that you might want to talk to your doctor about. So imagine 100% of your total symptoms as a pie. I love this example with my patients because it makes a lot of sense as to why there is no one thing that we can do for IBS that does boom, 100% gone symptoms. Yeah. So imagine your 100% of your symptoms, your gas, your bloating, your altered bowel habits, your pain, your nausea is a pie. We're trying to figure out what portion of your pie is related to what layer. So IBS-M, again, disorder of the gut-brain interaction, say you go through gut-directed hypnotherapy, and that shrinks your symptoms by, say, 60% less. So you have maybe 60% of your symptoms are due to that DGBI, and maybe you've got 40% of symptoms left over. Say they're gas, bloating, belching. Maybe that 40% is due to SIBO. We'll get into that in a second. Or maybe 75% is a a disorder of the gut-brain interaction, and then 25% of your symptoms like sneezing, hives, really rapid onset bloating, um, itchy skin, sort of allergy type feelings, maybe 25% of that of your pie chart of symptoms is related to a histamine intolerance. We are going into spring, and it's very important to note that we're going into spring, and if you feel like your IBS is just on an extra special out there level, you may have a layer of histamine intolerance. So we'll get into that in a second. Or say your pie is 100% here, and then gut-directed hypnotherapy addressing the gut-brain interaction shrinks it by 50%, and then maybe you just have random diarrhea days after you eat sugar. You might have sucrase isomaltase deficiency. We'll get into that in a second. Important to note, I just want to just let you know it's not only gut-directed hypnotherapy that can handle and reduce symptoms due to the disorder of the gut-brain interaction. There's cognitive behavioral therapy as well. There's other things, but gut-directed hypnotherapy and cognitive behavioral therapy just have the most evidence. Not to say that other things like meditation, mindfulness, are not helpful, but what I see in my practice is it is the easiest, fastest, and most practical way to go about it that is cost effective and accessible because it's app based. Not everyone has a bajillion dollars of benefits to see a counselor, psychologist, or etc. So just wanted to let you know there's other options, but those are my favorites just because of those reasons. So the combinations are literally endless and should be addressed in order of what is researched to be most likely to benefit someone with IBS, IBS-M specifically first, and then after the first steps that are usually the most impactful are done, you kind of do an assessment. What symptoms are left over? And then how you want to approach this is usually up to the patient and the healthcare provider to have a chat about it. So here's an example, layer example one. One of the most common ones, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or SIBO. This is where too many of your good gut bugs or maybe undesirable gut bugs that are supposed to stay in your large bowel. You have 5 pounds of gut bacteria and whatnot in your large bowel, 5 pounds. So when they creep out through your little ileocecal valve, it's a little trap door that separates your large bowel from your small bowel. When they sneak through there, one reason why they may sneak through there is if you're chronically constipated, they want to look for fresher pastures. They want to go for the fresher food. That can be a reason why they migrate through there. When they do that, our small bowel is really bad at moving gas through and isn't metabolically equipped to kind of make these gases inert. And it's just they're not supposed to be there in these numbers. Our small bowel is not sterile by any means, but the amount that can grow there is the problem, and the types of gut bugs that can grow is the problem. How many people with IBS-M are affected by SIBO? It's about 25% per the research. Why is this a problem? When we have too many gut bugs, we can get hydrogen or methane gas, and this can contribute through various mechanisms of speeding up or slowing down the gut and other processes like inflammatory processes and so many more things. It can also affect how your body breaks down nutrients. If you have SIBO really high up in the gut, where all your enzymes are that are made in the lining, your brush border of your small intestine, this can affect how you digest things like sugar and starch and lactose and so forth. So, um, yeah, just the things can be connected. So what to do if you suspect SIBO, consult your doctor, order a hydrogen methane breath test. Maybe they can. In the States, I believe your doctor can order it. And in Canada here, you have to pay for it yourself. Um, and there's also a hydrogen sulfide breath test that could be, like breath gas could be measured now. Hydrogen sulfide is more related to diarrhea. Methane increased is more related to constipation. Hydrogen isn't really related to either, but it can feed both of those sort of pathways. So the treatment usually is antibiotic therapy. That is the most evidence-based treatment, um, based on what gases are positive on your breath test. So that's SIBO. And there's also there's SIBO, and there's also intestinal methanogen overgrowth or intestinal sulfide overproduction. So histamine intolerance, layer example number 2. Now there was one study, it was pretty small, but it did suggest that 58% of people with IBS identified foods that were bothersome and that were high histamine. So there isn't a hard and fast 15% of people of IBS with IBS have to have histamine intolerance. It is, there may be something there. So histamine intolerance is when your body struggles to break down histamine due to a deficiency in the enzyme DAO. You may experience a wide range of symptoms, including gut issues and outside your gut. Histamine is just a compound, it's just a breakdown product of the protein amino acid building block histidine, and it's really tasty. It's found in aged cheeses, aged meats, wine, fermented products. So I know there's a lot of people out there who are just like, "Whoa, can't do wine, especially red wine. It kills me. I get a headache. I get flushed. I get super bloated, diarrhea, skin itching." This could be a layer of histamine intolerance. It's one of the highest histamine foods. Potential clues that there's a histamine intolerance going on. You've got a history of seasonal allergies, perhaps, and maybe you've got these random bloating or diarrhea episodes, especially heightened in the spring. Hello, it's springtime, and also the fall when the leaves start dropping and rotting on the ground. That is another peak in allergens that I see a lot of people booking in spring and fall. Um, and why this is because imagine your body is a bucket and you have histamine coming in through the environment, so those allergens that are blowing around in the environment, and you're also eating dietary histamine like aged cheeses, wines, leftover foods even. And eventually, if your histamine bucket doesn't have enough of that DAO enzyme in it, and your histamine bucket runneth over, this is where you experience symptoms. Your histamine bucket, or your ability to break down histamine in your body, can shrink when it is stressed, and other things like certain medications can shrink your histamine bucket. So it's really important to understand that um, it's not, if you had one reaction to red wine that is a histamine intolerance, it could have been that you had red wine and a charcuterie board and you were sitting outside in the patio in the springtime and it was a histamine tsunami. So this is really important to understand that it might not be a food, it might be a cumulative effect, histamine intolerance. Okay, so reactions to certain foods. If you find that you can eat a meal one night, like say it's like a chicken curry, and you can eat it and you're like fine, and the next day you eat it and all of a sudden it's like rapid bloating, even though you know exactly what was in there, you had it the day before and you were fine. I get a lot of people confusing FODMAP stacking with a histamine intolerance because histamine intolerance can do the same thing the next day. If it's a leftover meal, the longer food has been sitting, especially if there's protein in it, the more histamine is made, and this can increase the histamine in the food. And after a while, maybe this exceeds your bucket's threshold to break down. If you have a history of nutrient deficiencies like copper, zinc, vitamin C, these are nutrients that are required to make DAO. If you ever bore a child and you found that your symptoms were amazing during pregnancy, your placenta makes a ton of DAO. This could be one of the reasons why. And your symptoms beyond the gut, if you experience itchy skin, facial flushing, or running congested nose after eating something, that could be histamine intolerance as well. So, very common histamine intolerance. It also can be associated with when you overgrow those certain gut bugs. Certain gut bugs that you overgrow actually can make their own histamine and add to this histamine bucket just from the gut bugs that we may overgrow sometimes. So that could be one reason why SIBO or certain types of SIBO can actually contribute to histamine intolerance, and maybe those need to be eradicated first in order to have the histamine intolerance handled. Does that make sense? How there's a lot of like connection between layers. So you can have more than one layer. Sometimes when we address a layer, the other layer can go away. Okay. Histamine, brief overview. What to do if you think histamine intolerance is part of your story. Consult your doctor. And if you want to trial what reducing histamines in your diet looks like, kind of goes something like this. Step one, cut out alcohol. If that doesn't help symptoms, step two, cook and eat as fresh as possible, shop frequently, freeze leftovers, especially proteins. If that doesn't help with the symptoms, remove those really high histamine foods, and they're fermented, they're aged, they're processed, so soy sauce, even our beloved sourdough and low FODMAP diet, if that causes you some issues, perhaps it contributing to histamine. Um, it, so this is what else is it? Aged, processed, fermented. You know, what red wine it was already cut out in step one. You know what I mean? So old aged foods, miso. You know, so and if that doesn't help, step four, only if needed, because the low histamine diet can be very restrictive, and you don't want to go down a slippery slope of a restricted diet if not absolutely necessary. There's also other enzymes as well that you can take for histamine intolerance. So this is an example, though, of a low histamine day. Eggs, gluten-free toast, lunch, baked tofu with rice noodles and bok choy, and not soy sauce on the tofu, more like salt, pepper. Dinner, salmon, brown rice, cabbage. Snack, Havarti cheese, gluten-free crackers. So those are examples of a low histamine meal day. I want to share a quick little story of a client that I had, and she originally looked like she was suited for my IBS-M program. She had chronic constipation, but with these random, quite intense diarrhea episodes, um, but not to that 1 day a week experiencing abdominal pain and 25% of your abdominal, your bowel movements are abnormal and hard, and then 25% are abnormal and too loose. She didn't quite fit the criteria, so I didn't really know where to place her. But let's call her Gail, for example. So Gail came in with chronic constipation with these random episodes of diarrhea, vomiting, bloating, and nausea. Also very almost like vasovagal, like felt really like lightheaded and almost like just laid out completely incapacitated. Um, Doctor thought it was dumping syndrome. That's when the stomach empties too quickly in the small intestine. It's very common after upper GI surgery, which this patient had. So fair enough. Good guess. Diet recall on the days leading up to these really bad flare-ups included a ton of high histamine foods. And then when I dug a little deeper, the patient said that she read somewhere that these really fermented foods were good for the gut. Kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, and made a point of loading up certain days with these high histamine foods, unbeknownst to her. These very fermented foods that are very high histamine, which they can be beneficial for the gut. But if someone has a histamine intolerance, it actually may not go so well. So when I did the diet recall, saw all these high histamine foods on these before preceding these really bad flare-up days, and we removed not all foods, but just didn't have them all at once. Just had maybe a glass of wine at dinner, but not with pickles and kimchi and leftovers, etc. And so we basically reduced the histamine and with a natural water magnet to relieve constipation and gut-directed hypnotherapy. The constipation went away and the random diarrhea due to these histamine tsunami days stopped. So this is an example of not IBS-M. This is an example of a layer to someone who was just chronically constipated. So histamine intolerance can be a layer of someone with IBS-M. It also could be a standalone issue. Okay, so the next one is layer number 3, constipation with random diarrhea from sugar intolerances. Sucrose, fructose, lactose, polyols. So sucrase, isomaltase, I'll get to that in the next slide. Lactose intolerance, easily recognized. If you remove wet dairy and you're fine, then that is a clue. A breath test can also detect lactose intolerance as well. So excessive sugar alcohol intake. So if you have chronic constipation and your diarrhea days are only linked to when you have, a bag of candies that are no sugar added or sweetened with, erythritol, for example, this could cause that diarrhea, and it might not be IBS-M, it might be just sugar intolerance, or we can have someone with IBS-M and actually have some intolerance to certain sugars or sugar alcohols. This is sucrase isomaltase deficiency. So it could be complex sounding. It's basically very simple. In our small bowel, we have enzymes that help us break down sugar, like sucrose, regular table sugar, maple syrup, etc., and starches. If there's something that goes wrong in the small bowel where these are supposed to be made, or if you have the genes that code for certain mutations, your ability to break down sugar and starches is compromised. This occurs in a shocking amount of people with IBS. So if you have IBS-M or IBS-D, any element of diarrhea, and you notice your diarrhea days are worse or exacerbated when you have a very starchy meal day or a day with some sweets, and you find this is problematic, it's about 25 to 30% of people with IBS-M or IBS-D that could have genetic sucrase isomaltase deficiency. So if you notice that, say you go low FODMAP and you actually feel worse, low FODMAP can actually be higher in um, forms of sugar like, maple syrup and regular table sugar, as opposed to things like honey that we usually delete off the low FODMAP diet. If you feel worse, this could be a clue as to why. Um, so you could also feel slightly better on low FODMAP because things like apples are high in sucrose. Things like garlic are also not tolerated by people with genetic sucrase isomaltase deficiency. So we have also some overlap there. So what to do? There's testing that can be done by analyzing your small bowel samples taken via biopsy. So an endoscope goes down, takes little samples of your small bowel, and they test to see how your enzymes are functioning. There's medications and there's enzymes available for management of this issue. And of course, dietary modifications. Okay, so this is an example of a low sucrose, low starch meal day. Breakfast, plain Greek yogurt, blueberries. Lunch, grilled chicken breast on a salad. Dinner, ratatouille without onion and garlic. Snack, hard-boiled eggs and homemade almond flour crackers. Okay, example number 4, fructose intolerance. So this isn't to be mistaken with hereditary fructose intolerance, which is severe and dangerous. This is just regular old fructose. We know it's a FODMAP. Maybe someone feels better when it's off the diet, but maybe we have only random diarrhea days when we unbeknownst have just more fructose in the diet. And there's an example of a lower fructose diet that can help us identify if those random diarrhea days that we associate with IBS-M are in any way related to just a high fructose meal. So this could be just another potential layer in someone's story. You can see the meal examples there. And this will be up later, so if you want to take a look, you can. Okay, this is one of my last examples here of when it may not be IBS-M. So overflow diarrhea or full of stool is when liquid stool, like fresher stool, sneaks past a blockage of poop in your intestines. It's not the same as IBS-M. It occurs from chronic constipation. So if you have days, especially for people who maybe don't experience pain and have altered diarrhea to constipation, if you don't experience pain, pain is a criteria for IBS. So I would ask your doctor, but do I have IBS if I'm not experiencing abdominal pain? Because that would be a very good sort of opening conversation to what else could be going on. In the last couple months alone, I've had an huge amount of patients who were in my IBS-M program who reacted very oddly to the nightly duo of magnesium citrate and soluble fiber. And when this happens, the first thing I do is ask them to ask their doctor for an abdominal x-ray to check if they are full of stool. And I would probably say 9 times out of 10 they are. Um, if you feel like you have tummy discomfort and bloating after a high roughage meal day, or this builds later in the day, um, if you feel like you have constipation and then you have sometimes bouts of low volumes of runny bowel movements or diarrhea, but it doesn't come out in a lot, um, you may be full of stool here, especially if you have a pelvic floor issue, any nerve issues, if you've ever fractured your pelvis or you've had a bad accident, if you're a biker, especially if you have pressure on your nerves, of your pelvic floor. There's a lot of different explanations for why someone is backed up or full of stool. Um, Pelvic floor physiotherapists would be very helpful to decide if this is related to the nerves and muscles of your pelvic floors. But it's very common to have a diagnosis of IBS-M, and it winds up that someone is just full of stool and they have liquid stool just leaking past, and this is why their gut is really hard to get stabilized and regular. So if you feel like this is you and you feel like you don't quite fit this criteria of IBS-M, ask your doctor if they would be open to considering to give you a quick abdominal x-ray and to see what your stool burden level is, if any.
Jessica, I just want to
Yeah.
mention that we're coming up to 10 of the hour.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So
Perfect. Thank you for the time check. We're almost done. So a really good analogy for constipation is, and I heard this on the Gut Health podcast, so thanks to them with Kate Scarlatta and Dr. Riel. If you want to think about why we can get constipated or full of stool, this is one of the reasons. This is a good analogy to explain constipation that I absolutely love and going to use as long as I can. So if we look at a tube of toothpaste, pretend that is your bowel, and inside the paste is your stool, and the tube is your smooth muscle that lines your intestines. So, and the cap is your anal sphincter muscles. So, if there's a problem with any one of these parts of the toothpaste, this could result in constipation. My main point with this analogy is it's really good to get clear on where this constipation is coming from. If it's IBS-M, usually all we need is that natural water magnet to affect the paste, the stool consistency, so make stools softer. If that doesn't work, then there might be an issue with the squeeze, the muscles of your tubes, or the cap may be a pelvic floor issue of actually letting things out. So just to kind of break down how kind of nuanced constipation can be. Anyways, so if this is a lot of information, I get it. It's totally overwhelming. This is not even a fraction of what I cover in my programs of additional layers, but I hope it gives people food for thought of if you have IBS-M, what the biggest things you could do to start with. I suggest gut-directed hypnotherapy, a nightly water magnet combined with soluble fiber, and a temporary low FODMAP diet with an exit strategy. If that doesn't give you the majority of your symptoms stabilized, say 80% stabilized, you may have an additional layer to consider. Um, and if you're curious about your layers, all those are covered in every one of my self-study programs. I have one for every subtype of IBS, IBS-D, IBS-M, and IBS-C. And we aim to knock off the biggest things that can give you long-term relief first, and you've got that layers quiz after. So this is, I believe, the end of my presentation. Yeah.
thank you so much. So
Yes.
just to reiterate, everybody, Jess has these self-directed courses. They are incredibly helpful. It's like having her hold your hand all the way. So we will be sending information out on those. And we have about 7 questions.
One more thing, sorry to mention,
Yes,
just in
go
honor of
ahead.
IBS Awareness Month, if someone signs up for those self-study courses, I will personally pop on a 20-minute call with you and walk you through the program. I have
Oh my
never done this
goodness.
before, and that's why there's only a
Amazing.
few available because I only
Thank
have so much
you.
time in my calendar. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
incredible. Okay, let's jump into
Questions?
this. Do subtype changes over time?
1/3 of people can experience a change in their subtype, I believe, within a year span.
Oh, wow.
I usually see my clients remain in their subtype though for several years. If someone does change their subtype, typically it's diarrhea to constipation. If someone goes from constipation to diarrhea, I would absolutely, that would be the biggest change to head to your doctor for because that could be a red flag for something. At any time, it could be a red flag if you change your subtype to your doctor, but especially if it's diarrhea to constipation, excuse me, to
I
diarrhea.
have IBS and interstitial cystitis. Can you help me?
I'm sorry, but I could not hear you, Evelyn. Could you try that once again? All right. Well, we're going to go on. Maybe she'll come back on.
Okay.
Someone want to know how long you should do gut-directed hypnotherapy. I'll just mention that we did put up a link for the Nerva plan. There is, as Jessica mentioned, you want to be doing this for at least a month. What I do is I use it as maintenance. I did the 1-month plan, only missed one day. Was very proud of myself.
Good job.
It worked. It helped immensely, and then I use it as maintenance. So if I know that I'm going to have a really stressful day, and remember, stress can be good stress. Like the day of my son's wedding, I got up in the morning and I was like, I'm going to do a hypnotherapy
Mhm.
session. So how would you answer that question? How long should you do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. The programs are 6 weeks, and they give you the option to extend by 2 weeks to 8. I took the whole 8 weeks. It definitely is helpful, and totally they have the maintenance sort of idea. They can take it once in a while. Um, I did have a really good call with Claire from Mindset Health, and she mentioned that if stress and anxiety and depression might continue to drive your symptoms, or if you notice that you are reliant on gut-ridden hypnotherapy to keep stable, then you might want to consider their sister app, Claria, which is targeted at anxiety and depression. And I did that as well, and it's that absolutely is a game-changing one for those who are quite anxious or feel like their mood could use some TLC.
That's amazing. So Mindset Health, just so you guys know, is the parent company. They have Nerva, which is the gut directed hypnotherapy, and they have a few other hypnotherapy programs.
Hmm.
Um, Another question: how long do you take the water magnet and the fiber? So is this something that you just take for the rest of your life, every day? How do you know how long to take it?
Yeah, and it depends. It's very individual. Some of my IBS-M patients love it, stick with it, feel like it just gives them a better poop experience. Your carbonated gut bugs with IBS-M compared to IBS-D compared to IBS-C can be completely different and want to make your gut move either fast or slow. Same with those other additional layers, like say pelvic floor involvement, and there's an issue with actually going to the bathroom. So it really does depend. If personally, my gut needs help tapping the brakes every once in a while, so I stir soluble fiber. Actually, I have soluble fiber stirred into my coffee here. So it really does depend on how completely someone's bowel speed was. Remember back to that sort of pie chart of symptoms. If the bowel speed was related to that disorder of the gut-brain interaction, mainly, then we would probably see a lot of correction of that, and maybe they don't need their water magnet or soluble fiber anymore. But if their gut speed is driven by maybe that issue with like the cap, for example, they may need to be reliant on laxatives until that pelvic floor piece is addressed. So it really can depend. But magnesium citrate is safe for those who are eligible to take it, without kidney issues or certain medications, for long term. We need it as a nutrient in our diet. We need 320 milligrams daily, I believe. Anyhow, so this strategically just takes it in one little shot at night, so that it takes advantage of that water pulling in property of it. And same
I
with
have a
soluble
question.
fiber.
I have a personal question for you about kiwi. Kiwi are mentioned a lot. Do you suggest with or without skin?
Peel that, yucky.
People eat it. I never knew people ate the skin before I entered this low FODMAP world, but okay, you're saying
That's
peel.
interesting. I would actually go in the research and like make sure that they were peeling it. I assume they're peeling it. That'd be a good question for Andrea Hardy. She's
Okay,
my constipation queen.
someone wanted to know, you answered the question. They said they don't have any pain. Do they really have IBS? And so you said maybe time to go back to the doctor to ask some more questions.
Like, great.
Um, Someone says, do probiotics have the same effect as fermented foods on a histamine intolerance?
Certain probiotics actually reduce histamine. Some probiotics or some gut bugs actually make histamine. So it really depends on the type of IBS you have. If you have a layer of histamine intolerance, so probiotics the recommendations vary widely. I usually don't go probiotic route first because most people with IBS-C, 50% of them, for example, have a layer of intestinal methanogen overgrowth, and their gut bugs are already extremely diverse. And usually it it can I've seen it create more gas and bloating in these certain people, and it can actually kind of feel like
Mm.
two steps back. So yeah, probiotics are very. I usually leave those to the very end when we've knocked off the big explanations of what's going on here, and then if someone's got maybe 15% symptoms left and they're curious about a probiotic, just make sure you get one that is specific to your subtype. IBS-M, there isn't a probiotic specific to your subtype, of course, but it isn't to say that one might not be discovered soon. I hope so. But right now it's more of a, it's not where I'd go first. It's more correcting that underlying root cause of constipation and gut brain connection that can be more
Someone
effective.
wanted to know about Miralax. Now, Miralax is the polyethylene glycol. You did mention that before. So
Yeah.
could you just mention again the difference between the polyethylene glycol and the magnesium citrate?
Yeah, the mechanism is the same. It just pulls water into the bowel. It's called an osmotic laxative. So where we have stuff, water follows. That's kind of osmosis, right? So the difference with the two is magnesium is just an element, a nutrient, and Miralax or Restoralax, polyethylene glycol, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing, is just something that our body doesn't absorb, therefore stays in the gut, therefore water follows. So we don't get any nutrients from it. A lot of people who take magnesium citrate at night love it because it can help with sleep, muscle relaxation, restless leg syndrome, calming. It has a calming effect. Whereas PEG, I usually don't go for that first because it doesn't have all these like extra bonuses that we can have at night when we take magnesium. But if someone can't take magnesium, it's a great second choice for me personally for my clients. I would just be wary. There's been some chatter in the GI space recently, and I'll confirm this as soon as I can, that long-term use of polyethylene glycol may create some sort of I'm not sure if it's on the mental health side of symptoms, but I wanted to dive into that research a little bit more. So right now, I would say um, they seem safe for short-term use for now. For long-term use, stay tuned. There may be some research coming out about possible issues with PEG long-term.
Okay, Kathy wanted to know if there's any medication that works, or oh, meditation. Does meditation work as well as hypnotherapy?
Yeah, so what I like to say about meditation is that if it's targeted to your gut
Mhm.
symptoms, that could work. I don't have any, hard research for meditation programs compared to gut-directed hypnotherapy, but the point of gut-directed hypnotherapy is that it is targeted to specifically gut symptoms, much like, you know, smoking cessation hypnotherapy is directed towards smoking cessation. So we've got, if it's something is targeted, it is usually more effective. So if it's just meditation, definitely that's anytime we can sit and relax and breathe, great for the nervous system. For specifically targeting, reducing pain and the overreaction of our gut when we eat regular food, I'm not sure.
Okay, we're coming up. We're actually already at the top of the hour, so we can't take any new questions, but we have a couple of questions about anti-anxiety medications.
Mm.
Do you see those in relation to IBS-M helping?
Yes. Yeah, so I mentioned tricyclic antidepressants can be used for people in, according to the American College of Gastroenterology guidelines. They'll use they said tricyclic antidepressants can be used for those with the element of diarrhea. I believe, I forget which point that was in their recommendations. I think this is the 2020 guidelines. But again, if IBS-M is rooted in constipation, usually the dosage that's given in IBS is quite low, but if it's a higher dose, that medication does potentially have a constipating side effect. So I would say worth a conversation with your doctor and pharmacist to see if this would be a good option. But knowing what we know about IBS-M and that it is rooted in constipation, is this something that they would recommend? I believe that SNRIs, I believe like Cymbalta, if there's one, duloxetine is another, they may have less of a constipating side effect if someone is looking to sort of, I guess you call them neuromodulators, if someone was interested in these sorts of types of approaches, like medication approaches to their IBS. Just good chat with your doctor about what dose would be required. Would this exacerbate your constipation if we know that IBS-M is rooted in constipation?
Well, this has been jam-packed with information.
Whew.
I just want to thank everybody for sticking with us with, there's a lot of info, but wow, Jessica, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
for those of you who want more information, Jessica's self-directed courses at home would be a great next step
Yeah.
to help you in your low FODMAP journey, trying to get a hold of your subtypes. And I just have one thing, uh, Jessica, that I just want to bring up to get your take on, because it's a pet peeve of mine, the whole probiotic thing. So it's really confusing for people because doctors will recommend probiotics, and the doctors are not trained in the diet. And the registered dietitians who are trained in the diet understand that probiotics alter your digestion of FODMAPs. So if you're in the early stages of the low FODMAP diet and you're trying to determine your personal reactions to FODMAPs, if you're taking probiotics at the same time, you're working against yourself. So, when you were talking about probiotics, how are you specific about timing of introducing probiotics into your low FODMAP journey?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly why I don't add any more variables than necessary. That's why my programs start with 6 weeks of gut-directed hypnotherapy, because I know that's only going to have a net positive effect. The 2 nightly supplements, because I know that they're going to have a net positive effect if someone has IBS-M. Again, if not, and if it's all wonky, then probably see if they are full of stool or not. And then low FODMAP, we usually see that it helps people, again, if they have a layer of something else like sucrase isomaltase, maybe they get worse. So we have a fairly good grasp of these tend to be the top things we can do that have a net likely positive effect. And that's why I like to go for those first and then save the kind of wild cards that if people want to experiment till after we've stabilized their symptoms to at least 80%, meaning that, 80% of, the last month you've been hunky-dory, everything's situation under control and you're feeling good. But if you want to see if like a probiotic will help give you that extra edge, I usually say it's probably due to a layer that we might need that extra, 20% addressed. But if a probiotic is at that point wanting to be addressed, in each program for every subtype, I have what I would recommend for probiotics specifically for each subtype of IBS that some people could try out.
Because they would not be the same.
And they
Big
would not be
point.
the same.
Yes.
Exactly. And
Right.
just so you
Right.
know, a fancy probiotic with a bajillion strains that costs a lot of money, there's a lot of like subscription ones that they're really expensive and there's not a lot of clinical data to them. If you want to know probiotics that have clinical data, go to Probiotic Chart. There's probioticchart.ca for those in Canada, and you have probioticchart.com, right? And do you have that in the
I'm
States?
not sure. I'm not
But
sure. We'll have
there's
to look that
yeah,
up.
go to probioticchart.ca, because that has any probiotic that has evidence for a specific condition like IBD, IBS. So it has to be a probiotic is by definition a a species of live organisms that have demonstrated a human benefit for a certain population given to them for a certain reason. If someone is just taking a probiotic off the shelf and they don't know what the research is for that specific strain on their specific body, it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at a wall and it's just a big kind of waste of money in my opinion. And yeah, it could potentially make things worse. If you already
Right.
have too many gut bugs, you're adding more things that can create more gas, but not to be said that there isn't a time and place for a probiotic. It's usually at the end of the process in my practice.
Thank you. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
And so, everyone, you are going to get a recording. Please be patient with us.
Mm.
Robin turns it around as quickly as possible. It will come. You will get links to products that we mentioned, different items, things like Nerva. We have articles on Nerva. You can read about gut directed hypnotherapy. I use it, I have found it to be extraordinarily helpful. Um, We'll have information on all of Jessica's courses. And we did mention that if you are interested in having help with meal planning, we do have a big 50% off discount going on right now with Real Plans. We'll send you information about that as well. So thank you so much, everybody here. Keep an eye out on other upcoming webinars, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
you.
Thank you everyone for
Very
coming.
informative. Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
welcome.